And we're live.
Live.
Welcome, viewers, to Sarah&Abby's Vegan Adventures.
Starring
Sarah&Abby. So we actually got some feedback from some viewers that we were laughing too much. And we would just like to say that we think we're really funny.
Yeah. I like to laugh. Shoot me.
So I don't know if the viewers know this, but our very own Sarah from Sarah&Abby's Vegan Adventures is a CATCH certified, Canine Trainers Academy certified dog trainer. She is also certified in fear-free training, and she has 7 years of experience working with canine Americans. Now, today we're going to be discussing some common quote tools that trainers like to use.
Quote trainers
like to use with our fellow canine Americans. And we're just going to be getting into a dialogue. This isn't, an attack on anybody. This isn't, condescending. This is just a dialogue.
Yep.
And we want to provide some information and, believe us when we say we have done our homework. So we're ready for you. Sarah, Start us off.
Okay, so common aversives. So shock collars, the collars that have those little prongs in them that deliver a static electricity. Those are they're called e-collars too. Prong collars are collars that they have those, prongs, the metal links with prongs that sit on the dog's neck. And choke collars are the metal chains that tighten. Just so
now,
we're clear.
What is an aversive, Sarah? What for our viewers? What are we talking about here? Is this like a dog code thing?
No. So an aversive applies to any type of learning, human or animal, even insects.
Ooh.
They're starting to do some research with that. So an aversive is any unpleasant stimuli that induces changes in behavior via negative reinforcement or positive punishment. Okay. So negative reinforcement is removing a stimulus in order to increase the likelihood of a behavior. So the negative simply means removing something. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It just means removing something. And reinforcement means to increase the likelihood of a behavior. So an example of negative reinforcement as it pertains to dogs could be teaching recall. You could tell the dog to come. The dog doesn't come. You start shocking them. You hold the button down. Shock, shock, shock. And then once the dog finally turns around to come to you, you stop shocking them. So what that's doing is removing that stimulus in order to increase the likelihood of the dog coming to you when you call them. Okay?
Okay.
So positive punishment now. Again, positive, negative doesn't mean good or bad. Positive simply means adding something. And punishment means to decrease the likelihood of a behavior. So those three tools that I just mentioned fall under the category of these two things, mainly positive punishment. Okay. So punishment to a dog would be correcting a dog. When you give a leash correction, when you use a prong collar or an e-collar, that's punishment. And you can't have negative reinforcement without the addition of positive punishment, because it always starts out with positive punishment, like that shock collar recall example. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, but I was a psychology major. I think it also it's easier for people to understand it with like kid examples. So what is a positive punishment if your kid misbehaves?
So spanking your kid would be positive punishment. Yelling, intimidating them, like hitting a wall or stomping your foot.
Okay.
Anything, again, that's adding something when you want them to stop something.
The negative, what's a negative punishment? So like taking away TV time or taking away dessert?
Yeah, or like a timeout.
Okay.
Removing something to decrease the likelihood of behavior, whether you're removing the the stimuli around the child, right? Because you're putting them in a timeout, or you're removing TV time, or you can't have dessert.
Like consequences, basically. Like,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And then, so what? Negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. So a positive would be like, oh, you cleaned your room, so you can have a lollipop.
Yeah. Or good job, just good job cleaning your room. Or, yeah, giving them, you get to go to your friend's house later because you cleaned your room. Oh, you ate your vegetables. Now you get to have cake. For our dogs,
Okay.
positive reinforcement is praise, treats, access to the outdoors, a bunch of things, petting, affection, playtime, anything that your dog deems as a reward, which differs across, every dog because they're all different.
Okay. So what are, I mean, so you talked about shot collars. Are there other aversives to use with dog training?
Yeah, so those three that I just mentioned are, in my opinion, the most harmful and the most common. But, spray bottles are still an aversive, yelling, raising your voice, hitting, shaker cans. Those are all considered aversives.
Because
But
it's an addition.
yes,
Right.
yes, it's the addition of something to stop the dog from doing something. Right. So you're going to spray your dog if they're demand barking at you, right? You're adding something to stop them from barking at you. Shaker cans. The dog's counter surfing. Some people like to take a can full of coins and shake it to stop the dog from jumping on the counters. So,
what about those sprays, those lemon or green
the
apple?
citronella. Oh,
No, the green apple, like bitter.
so that's a little different than what we're talking about, but those are still considered aversive.
So what is the purpose of using an aversive? I mean, why would somebody use an e-collar or, a pinch collar? Like, why do trainers advocate for
So
these methods?
the thing about aversives is that they give you quick results. So going back to the bitter apple and the spray bottle example that we were just talking about, I have been training my puppy without the use of any aversives. I've been trying. So it's taking a little while longer for him to learn some pretty basic things like not getting into everything around the house, right? So the reason for that is because I haven't been using bitter apple spray. I haven't been using a spray bottle because I really want to practice using positive reinforcement because, those skills are going to stay with him a lot longer. So using aversives tends to give you quicker results. So if I were to spray Russell every time he were to go to my shoe, right? He would get the point a lot quicker than with what I'm doing now, with doing a lot of leave its and giving a lot of praise and redirecting him to other things. But I know that actual training, positive reinforcement and redirections is going to have a longer lasting effect. So trainers like to use aversives because it's quicker and a lot of times it's easier.
Well, and this is all based on learning. So when you're teaching anybody anything, adult, kid, anyone, it takes time. I mean, we say training like it's something, you know, I feel like we treat dog training as if it's some foreign concept or idea, but training, athletic training, you don't become a superstar basketball player overnight. That's time in the gym. That's time perfecting your skills. You don't
Yes.
you don't learn your times tables overnight. I mean, how many times were we sitting at the table with our parents, like frustrated, didn't know what we were doing? Like, you don't just have that. You get an
Exactly.
aha moment, but it comes after weeks and months of, practice and learning. It's
Yes.
learning. They're learning.
Yes. Exactly. It's a process and it takes time and there are no shortcuts. And when you try to use shortcuts, that's where the fallout happens.
Okay.
When we
So,
try to use these shortcuts.
yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about those fallouts. Dun dun dun.
That'd be a good spot for a sound effect.
I know. Well, and about skipping steps. So, like, I know we were talking about earlier, trainers like to, those quote trainers again, they put the dogs, in their maximum environment or even over their maximum threshold because they are skipping the steps.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
So, positive reinforcement training, like we said, takes a while. So part of that process is introducing your dog to what you're trying to teach them in a low distraction environment, which would be your home, and then gradually increasing the distractions and, the difficulty until you're in the real world situation where you could use it. So
Like a
for
store.
example, like a store. So say I have a leash reactive dog, and when he sees other dogs on leash, he barks and lunges, right? I'm going to teach him an alternate behavior. So I'm going to teach him to look at me. I'm not going to start that process at a park with a bunch of dogs when he doesn't even know what look means yet, right? I'm going to teach him look just in my house, not even with the TV on. Look, teach him look, okay? And then in every room of your house, teach look. And then start adding some distractions. Have the kids running around. Then take them into your backyard. Then around your own neighborhood. You see what I'm saying? You gradually increase the distractions. So what a lot of aversive trainers do is maybe they'll teach the behavior, in the house, but then they just go right into the field and start trying to teach the dog on the first training session. And that's not, how
Learning
works.
happens.
Yes, you can't teach a dog to do something in one session, especially when it's fueled by an emotional response. So a lot of, these behavioral issues that we use aversives with, right? Like reactivity is probably the main one, barking. Those are all mostly emotional responses. So you cannot change a dog's emotional response in one training session. So a trainer who tells you, "Oh, one session and the dog's going to be different," that's just not possible.
Or if you're using a tool and you say, "Oh my God, he was a different dog in one sec," it's probably an aversive.
Yes, because the dog was scared and learned that if they do nothing at all, then the aversive stops, right? Think about it. A trainer is a stranger to your dog.
And another thing is, I think advocates of these methods, these aversives, say that, you have to be the alpha and you have to dominate your dog. And if you use positive reinforcement, then you're just like letting your dog walk all over you. And you're giving your dog too much control. So, I mean, is that a thing? I mean, is my dog thinking I'm a wimp?
So, yeah, that's really common. A lot of aversive trainers like to say that your dog can't walk all over you. Exactly what you said. The dog thinks they're in control over you. Oh my gosh, they're in charge. No. So, dominance and alpha are words that, a lot of trainers like to use. They're very outdated. So, they're based off of dominance theory. So dominance theory, is implying that dogs are basically little wolves. So it was based on a study done years and years ago where a group of scientists took a bunch of wolves from the wild and put them into captivity. And they observed them. And they observed a clear alpha who was very aggressive. There was tons of fighting, and that one alpha wolf was the most aggressive, and everyone was showing him submissive gestures and rolling on their backs. And it was just a very clear hierarchy. Okay. And the alpha was very aggressive and had to constantly prove his alphaness to the other wolves. So this study was published, and all the dog trainers at the time were like, "Oh my God, like we have to model our training after this. So we have to be the alpha. We have to constantly prove our alpha to our dogs, or else they're going to try." And it's a constant power struggle, basically. And if your dog tries to dominate you, that's really bad.
Yeah, okay? Like don't let your dog, like if your dog's looking at you, make sure they look away first.
Yes.
Or don't let them win at tug of war.
Don't let them sleep in the bedroom with you. Oh, not on the bed. So then the same group of scientists actually was like, this study doesn't really make sense because we kind of used captive wolves. So let's study wolves in the wild. And when they did that, they found that a wolf pack is a family unit. It's mom and dad who mate for life. Aww. And the cubs. And it's just a natural family unit. Just like you naturally respect and learn from your parents, that's what the wolves do. There's not a constant power struggle because it's understood. that these are the adults, you know? So there
That's
is not
beautiful.
yes. And the alpha, there's rarely aggression within the pack because they're a family and it's just understood. So yes, there is an alpha, the mom and dad. So it's not a constant power struggle. The alphas are not showing constant aggression. So then these scientists, published this study, but all the dog trainers were like, nah, the other study fits our narrative more.
Yeah.
So that's where we get this whole alpha theory from. And then, branching off of that, dogs and wolves are genetically identical, but they're still considered different species. So it's really not fair to compare our domestic dogs to a wolf pack anyway. So when you study a wild dog, which would be a feral dog, they don't live in packs. They pretty much live by themselves. They'll come together for food, for mating, but mom and dad don't mate for life. The mom will chase the dad away, and
Mood.
then raises the puppies, and then the puppies go away. So it really doesn't apply at all to domestic dogs. Any type of, pack structure, alpha theory thing.
Well, and you know what I'm thinking of? Twilight.
Mm.
Who was the alpha? Sam, who was the calm,
Mm-hmm.
like, didn't, he wasn't the toughest or strongest, or most
Exactly.
hot-headed. Like, obviously you had Jacob, who was,
Love him.
hot-headed. You had Quill and, I forget the other one's name. They were, like, always wanting to fight somebody and always, like, bursting into their wolf forms. But Sam was the alpha, and he was the calm, and he could get them to listen without intimidating them.
Yes. Intimidation. Yes. That's like the root, of all of this. People just think I'm alpha, I have to intimidate my dog.
And it just
And
doesn't make sense in
and in
nature.
any social, group of animals, the alpha is never the aggressor, is never aggressive. they're
That's
they're just
true.
they're always calm. And think about like leaders, just good leaders in, you know humans. um
Inhuman.
Human leaders that we respect are calm and they lead by example. They're not intimidating us. Think about your teachers in school. The teachers that you
That's a
really
good
liked and
example.
you really respected were not the mean teachers that were yelling at you.
That's a really good
My
example.
thanks. I just thought of it. My favorite teacher yet, like, never raised his voice or got, like, punished us or threatened us or anything like that. Just respect him and trust
And
him.
I bet you remember that class the most, like the most material.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about why aversives are ineffective for learning. So, first of all, stress inhibits learning in any species, in any being. It doesn't matter, cat, dog, human, baby, adult. So, we have some data here for the viewers. So, this is from a not for profit that works a lot with legislation in Canada. They compiled a bunch of research from scientists who studied the effect of learning and the different methods. So, we do know that mild stress tends to enhance learning, but that higher or more chronic levels of stress actually inhibit the ability of animals, and that includes humans, to learn.
Okay, so eustress is good stress. EU
Ooh.
stress.
Ooh.
EUSTRE. Okay, so eustress is good stress, right? Anytime your body is undergoing any type of like change or excitement, that's stress on the body, and stress could be good. You are getting asked on a date.
Your cortisol will rise. Yeah.
Yes, that's stress, but that's good stress, right? And then bad stress is, oh my gosh, I have to study for this test. Oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. That's obviously bad stress. So, in that example with that study, mild stress, I'm assuming they're talking about eustress because the dog they're learning and they're with their owner, and it's stress on the body because it's good, right?
I mean, we learned about this in psychology. There's like a peak, there's like a curve. If you're stressed, to a certain level, it increases learning. But then there's a very delicate threshold of when it becomes too much,
Mm-hmm.
and then where it inhibits learning, and in
Mm-hmm.
particular the ability to consolidate and retrieve memories. So that's, again,
Ooh.
oh, what does sit mean? I don't remember because I was stressed when I
Mm.
learned it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. An aversive, because of how it's designed, it's going to cause stress to your dog, which is going to inhibit the learning process. Just because an aversive is it it's adding something to decrease a behavior, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the addition of that something is going to stress out your dog. So you can't a dog isn't going to learn while they're being stressed out.
And okay, I
Yes.
found it. It's an inverted U. So just draw U upside down. That's the stress curve.
Mm.
And when it's very low pressure, so when you're bored, when a student is bored, they're not learning a lot because they're not being challenged, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have moderate levels and high levels, moderate to medium levels of pressure and, that quote stress, that's where you have the optimal performance. It's what
Ooh.
they call the ideal zone. That's the top of the U. But then it says high. And then when you have that strain, that's where you get the zone of delusion and the body can't focus anymore. The mind can't focus anymore. And when
Ooh.
you get to very high stress, you have burnout. So you could not be challenging the student or the dog enough. You're boring them. There's low performance. Or you're giving them it's too much stress, too much pressure,
Mm.
and they're going through burnout and not forming new memories. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to be within that. If they know sit, don't do sit 10 times, but, challenging them, teaching them new tricks, teaching them new skills, but
Yes.
not putting too much. Again, with that reward-based training, there is a positive correlation between using reward-based training methods and the dog's ability to learn a new task. And again, positive reinforcement improves the learning ability
Mm.
of dogs. And higher frequency of punishment was correlated with higher anxiety and fear scores. So again, that's inhibiting learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Sarah, how does that factor into aversives?
My dog pulls on a leash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I decide to use a prong collar on him because he pulls. And every time he pulls, I correct him, right? Because I'm adding something. I'm adding a leash correction to decrease the likelihood of him pulling. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm teaching the dog not to pull, and every time he pulls, I'm giving him a correction. That's going to make him stressed out because the way a prong collar is designed to add, pressure to behind the pressure points behind the ears, right?
Well,
So,
Sarah, I've usually seen them like on their neck. Is that?
okay. So, majority of prong collars that I've seen are not even the correct size or fitted correctly on the dog, which also makes the use of aversives an issue because the common person who's using them, they are not using them correctly. So, prong collars are designed to sit behind the dog's ears very high up on the neck. The size of the prongs are also really important. You don't want really big prongs, you don't want really small prongs depending on the size of the dog. So a lot goes into properly fitting a prong collar. Um, so I've noticed, people with prong collars that are loosely hanging on the dog's neck, even below their regular collar, which is just total improper placement anyway. Sometimes people will say, oh, well, I want to be nicer to my dog and make it looser. Well, now that irritation, right? It's rubbing on the dog because it's loose. So now you're hurting the dog even more. So there's really no, right answer. So commonly we see the one low on the dog's neck, right? Because that's like where our dog's regular collars sit, and this is called a collar. So that's why would we assume it goes up there, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that causes a lot of issues too, improper fitting. Um,
Well,
and
because
yeah,
all the muscles are there, right? I mean,
all
that's where.
yeah. So even if it's fitted properly, it's still going to damage your dog's neck. But improper placement is going to do lots worse damage. And a lot of people, again, who aren't trained with it, don't know how to use it. So like I said before, it's designed to give your dog a correction. So where it's placed on that dog behind the ears, right? When the dog pulls, you're supposed to yank it, right? And then the dog's going to get corrected and say, oh, okay, let me not do that. People don't know that and will have the collar sitting low on the neck and think that they don't have to do anything and it's just a magic
Yeah,
device. And I've seen dogs straining, pulling on prong collars and choke collars, choking themselves out.
literally.
So that's a major problem, which is why these tools should not be sold on the market at all. You know?
And they also did studies with damage to the neck. Is you can't see. People will say, "Oh, they're fine." You don't see it, and you don't know what's happening. Dogs are extremely good at hiding pain. You go to your vet anytime, they'll tell you. I mean, Sarah's older dog had a tumor the size of what? How big was it?
The size of 2.5 grapefruits on his liver.
Yeah, and the vet said, "Oh, I'm sure he's in pain," but dogs are extremely good at hiding their pain because in the wild, they get killed, by a predator, whatever,
exactly.
if they vocalize. But so the research on collar damage said, the majority of dogs equipped with these types of collars that are getting leash corrections will sustain some form of injury. So it's not whether or not they will be injured, but how severe the injury will be. And again, another thing they studied was restricted movement. So when you're restricting your dog's movement, it leads to pain, muscular tension, and sometimes aggression. So
because frustration, because they are
exactly.
being restricted, fuels aggression. Soda machine, candy machine. You put money in to get your chocolate bar because you're starving and you're going to faint and you need sugar. And you put your dollar in and nothing comes out. So you hit the machine, nothing comes out. So then you start bang, right? Maybe you don't bang it like a psychopath, but now you get pissed
then
off.
you put another dollar in. You're like, okay, then I'll just get two. Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. So now you're pissed. Maybe you give it a little kick. So you're frustrated that you didn't get your candy bar, or road rage, right?
Oh yes.
I'm sitting in traffic and then now I'm honking my horn because I'm pissed because I'm frustrated.
Because
Same
you're
thing
constricted.
with dogs.
Your movement is inhibited. You can't get out of the traffic jam.
Yep.
And there's literally
it
nowhere
just
you
comes
can
down
go.
to frustration. And then that frustration fuels aggression. So frustration on a leash being restricted by a prong collar, right? Or even if we want to just by a leash in general, which is why leash reactivity is such a common thing in dogs. They're frustrated because they cannot get to the dog. So that's really important to, understand.
In Sweden, they did a chiropractic study, found as many as 91% of dogs with spinal injuries had histories of being pulled and jerked on leads, which I think is crazy.
Problems with the larynx and the trachea. Labs are prone to having issues with their throat when they get older. Like my old dog has laryngeal paralysis. Maybe because he's a lab, but also we had a trainer that used aversives. And my poor old man did have a prong collar when he was young. So maybe that's because of the fact that he's a lab, or maybe it's because of the prong collar that trainer brought over when I was 10 years old. So it causes problems.
What about the choke ones, the ones that aren't the prongs? What's wrong with those?
So again, most people are misinformed that use those. They think that it's some magic tool that they just put on their dog and the dog's going to stop pulling. And they don't have to do anything. They don't have to teach the dog anything. So you'll see dogs straining on their choke collars, right? And
yeah, I've never seen one not doing that.
Yeah. So those don't have a stopper. So a regular martingale collar or even a prong, they won't tighten all the way because there's a stopper.
Okay.
Choke collars, it's a noose. So it will just constrict and constrict and constrict. And dogs have passed out because they're getting essentially strangled. So they are very, very, very dangerous. And especially if your dog wears it all the time. A lot of people have choke collars that they just keep on the dogs all the time because
With
it's
their
easier.
tags, yeah.
Yeah, with their tags on it, you know. If your dog gets snagged on something in the house and then freaks out, and especially this can happen on any type of flat collar, which is why it's always best to take your collars off, especially if you leave your house, you know, leaving them unsupervised.
Mm-hmm.
But especially a choke collar, they'll get caught on something, potentially freak out, alligator roll, and now your dog is strangled
To death.
to death. But that's really on any collar. So I really recommend that collars be taken off in the house,
Well,
especially if
especially
you're
if you
gonna.
have multiple dogs, because them
Yes.
playing on each other can get tangled.
Ruger actually did that the other day with Russell. He grabbed onto Russell's collar and was pulling him. So if dogs are playing, right, they have their collars on. They'll grab their collars, they'll grab their harnesses. So always try to have as minimal amount of equipment on them if they're playing.
Yeah, I think the issue is that people think of dogs built in to them is the collar, and the collar is really a tool for safety and for, if your dog is not reactive on a leash, then for walking. But
and identification.
Yeah, for safety. So when you're in the house and you're going to bed, or that you're supervising your dog, it's not a chance that they're going to run out the front door. That's a tool. You don't need it.
Yeah. Especially in crates with puppies. You don't want to. I know puppies are squirmy, and a lot of times it's a production to have to put their collar and their harness on because they're so wiggly. So people like to just keep it on. But I've read very sad stories of, the same thing. The puppies, just regular collar, getting snagged on something jagged in the crate, and then they freak out and then they strangle. So take stuff off in the house.
Okay, what about the people? So my dog is fine. They don't have any injuries.
Okay.
What about the psychological damage? I mean, would we see that?
Well, I want to talk about physical damage on a shock collar too.
Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah. So prong collars and choke collars, obviously, pressure on the throat can injure the thyroid gland, can cause issues with the larynx and the trachea, all of that. Shock collars or e-collars, also, invisible fences. This is really what I'm going to be talking about.
Bark collars.
Yes. If you're using an e-collar for training, most of the time, like, people do take those off when they're not training. But invisible fences and bark collars, a lot of people keep those on all day, right? Because they're letting the dog in and out of the house all day. Dogs will end up with marks on their neck, sores, right? Where those two little, I don't know what they're called, but the two little points where the shock gets delivered on their neck, right? They'll end up with sores there. Those aren't burn marks because burns are caused by heat and the shocks are, made by static electricity.
Wait, but, Sarah, so you're saying you looked this up and you're saying it's not a shock? You're admitting that?
Yes, it is not a burn mark. I'm not saying that your shock collars are burning your dog's skin. No.
Oh my God, wow.
But if you leave it on all the time, like, invisible fence collars, it will cause skin irritation and necrosis, which is dying tissue on the neck because those two metal points are rubbing on your dogs. And like I mentioned before with the prong collars, people often will keep the invisible fence collars pretty loose, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to hurt their dogs, right? Which is great. But that can cause more irritation, right? Because they're designed to sit, again, pretty high up on the neck and just be snug enough so it's not bouncing around when the dog walks. If you loosen that, then those two metal points are going to be rubbing even more and create more irritation.
Let me show you this. This is the Invisible Dog Fence website. Should I remove the invisible fence computer collar from my dogs or cats? Oh God. Neck periodically. Yes, it is very important to evaluate or remove the collar nightly. Because pets grow and change inside, is it important that you take the time to remove, check, or adjust the collar. Check the fit of your pet's collar to make sure that it fits snugly but not too tightly and is not causing any irritation. best way to fit the test of the collar is to be able to fit one finger between the correction post. Oh, that's what they're called.
Oh.
And the skin on your pet's neck. Neck irritation may develop if the collar is too tight, but is most likely to take place during 1, warm, wet weather conditions, 2, with thick coated dogs, 3, during shedding season, or 4, anytime the computer collar unit is left on for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
Failure to check any collar will result in skin irritation or pressure necrosis. These are not burns, since invisible fence uses static correction, but instead the result of skin irritation and not checking the proper fitting of the collar. So this is straight from Invisible Fence website, guys. Like,
pretty much everyone that I know that uses an invisible fence don't take it off at night.
Or ever. Yeah.
Or
I
ever.
don't, because they can't add the 5 seconds to their daily to take it.
So that's just part of being a responsible dog owner. You have to research the, products that you're using. Any tool that you're using, even, the harness that I love, the Easy Walk harness, you have to research that. You have to fit it properly. You have to make sure you're doing the training properly with it. You're doing wrong by your dog if you're, getting any tool and not following the guidelines.
And yeah, I can't even keep talking because I'm gonna get upset. Talk about the psychological damage.
Okay, so let's use a prong collar example again.
The prong collars are the metal ones, not the ones that tighten like a bike
not
chain.
The ones that just look like a chain.
Yeah, the ones that look evil.
Yeah, the ones that have the spikes in it.
They're now making sleeker models. The outside is plastic and the inside has the prongs. They're not metal. They're plastic, but they're still hard and they're still designed to place pressure on the back of the ear and the pressure points. And there's also making now elastic ones that are designed to just tighten when they pull. So again, it's not even that you're supposed to do a least correction. It's just supposed to, quote, be a magic tool, which is just not how learning works again.
We talked about the physical harms, right, that these tools can have on your dog. So now what's very important to me is the psychological damage and the behavioral ramifications that happen because of that. So prong collar example, we'll use that. I put a prong collar on my dog to get him to stop pulling, right? So my dog loves people, right? And he pulls because he's pulling towards people. This is an example, guys.
Yeah, I was just about to say, this is
an example, folks. Russell does not like people anyway. So anyway, dog loves people, pulls. Okay. So, I'm the trainer or I'm the handler, right? I'm going to correct my dog every time he pulls, right? Or the split second before he pulls, right? When he pulls towards that person. So essentially what I'm doing now is every single time that my dog sees a person, I'm correcting him, right? Because I know as the handler, I'm correcting him for pulling, right? The dog's point of view, let's see what the dog is learning there. The dog doesn't know that he's pulling, right? The dog's not saying to himself, I'm going to pull towards this person. The dog is saying, person, oh my God, woohoo, right?
Yep.
Okay. So
I've heard them say that in English.
Yes. So now, every time the dog sees a person, right, I'm going to give them a leash correction. So now, the association was not made between pulling and correction. You just made an association between person and correction. Some people also do this with jumping on people. I spoke about this in another episode where, the dog was so excited to see people that she would jump. So the owner, as the trainer, actually recommended that they give her a little leash correction when she went to jump. So same thing there. Preventing them from pulling, preventing them from jumping. Okay. You make an association now between person and correction. Uh-oh. Right?
Ooh, that's a sound effect.
That's a sound effect. So now your dog that loves people is now going to be like, ooh, correction's coming. This is bad. So some dogs will shut down. And by shut down, I mean that they're not going to show any type of emotion because they, again, person equals correction. I'm going to get corrected. I'm just going to not do anything, right? And, if you're lucky, all your dog will be is shut down in those situations. A lot of people mistake calm, right? Oh, the dog was so calm. Like the trainer came for an hour and like it was a different dog, right? She became so calm around people in one session. Okay, because your dog got corrected enough times that she learned to not do anything at all to stop the correction, right? So if you're lucky, that's what will happen. Now, if you're not lucky, the dog shut down because it's scared, right? So what does fearfulness lead to? Fearfulness can lead to now defensive aggression. So now you made that association between person and correction. Now that dog could potentially become aggressive towards people or
And
other
again, this
dogs
is
or
this is based off of learning theory. This is simple
yes.
learning.
Yes. So it's learning by associations. It's right there is classical conditioning.
Yes.
Right there. So you're trying to do, some operant conditioning, right? By training your dog to not pull, training your dog to not jump. You're trying to teach them the consequences of a behavior. But in that, you can't have one without the other. You did some classical conditioning there too, where the dog just learned simple association between person coming into the house, leash correction. And that can really have negative effects and, fear issues. Yeah, so people like to use, I'm just going to ramble.
Do it.
People people will see a dog walking next to the handler or the trainer, right? Head down, tail down, and say, "Oh my goodness, that dog is so well behaved," right? It's so calm. That dog is so well trained. Um, Abby's actually going to pull up a video or a picture from this training company that
I like when you
posts.
say my name.
Oh, thanks. That posts a lot of videos of their dogs, and they'll say things like, "Oh, so and so was so reactive towards people when they came to me. Now look at them," and they'll show a video of the dog wearing a prong collar, wearing a shock collar, and walking with their head down, tail between their legs next to them. Now, I don't see that as a calm and well-behaved dog. I see a shut down dog that's scared to do anything else. So stress signals are something that's really important to know if you're a dog owner. Stress signals obviously show when the dog is uncomfortable or if they're showing, an appeasement gesture. They're not always bad. Dogs communicate through body language. So if your dog is showing a stress signal, it's like, it's normal, right? So a lot of dogs in these videos and in these training, I look at a bunch of different training pages. And I've noticed that, the dogs with aversive tools on them are exhibiting multiple stress signals. So, whale eye, so that would be where the whites of the eye are showing, right? Ears back, facial tension in their face, not having an open mouth. Lifting up a paw is a sign of stress and nervousness. Lip licking, yawning. Be mindful when you're looking at trainers and you're trying to pick a trainer what their posts look like too, because also if they're posting photos where the dog is showing stress signals, they are most likely not that educated in dog behavior.
Oh,
If they're
this is
posting a photo
cringy.
of a dog licking their lips.
Oh, yawning, yawning, yawning. He just yawned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he just cringed when the handler went to pet him.
Yes. So just, when picking a trainer, watch their videos, look at their pictures, talk to them.
Tails
Stay away
down.
from trainers who use words like alpha, dominance, guarantee, people who offer to train your dog in one session, because again, that's not possible. So stay away from those, red flag words when picking a trainer.
I'm cringing. Also, can you talk a little bit about tail wagging? Just because they're tail wagging doesn't mean they're happy.
Yeah. So people like to people think that, oh, tail wagging, happy dog, right? Um, say you're approaching a chained dog, right? A chained dog, and he's barking at you, and his tail is wagging, and it's up high. That dog is not trying to say hi to you. Um, stay away. So when you're looking at a dog's body language and you're trying to tell what they're feeling, you can't look at just one body part, right? You have to look at the whole dog. So the eyes, the face, the what the mouth is doing, what the ears are doing, what the overall just whole body, are they leaning forward, are they leaning backwards, and the tail. So not if it is wagging or not, but the carriage of the tail. So when some dogs meet other dogs, their tail will go straight up and it'll do short little really really fast wags, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, the dog's tail is wagging," but the dog might be snarling, showing his teeth, be very tense, and that's not a dog that's being friendly. It's not being aggressive, but he's aroused in some way. You know, he's on
And
alert.
the low tail wag too. Like if their ears are back, they're wagging their tail. They're not. They're nervous.
They're nervous, exactly. So a really confident dog is gonna approach you, confident, like good confidence. Happy, I want to say hi to you, is going to approach you with a lowered head, eyes squinty, saying hi. And the tail is going to be doing, even with his back, wags, right? Maybe it'll be a little lower if he's just meeting you, right? But those are all important. And a lot of times in these videos, the dog is not, the tail is is tucked. When I'm training dogs, I like the tails to be neutral and wagging and, having fun, and the dog to be panting and smiling and having fun and engaging with me. I don't want a dog who's just walking next to me like a robot. That's weird.
So, yawning, I didn't know this before I met Sarah, is a stress signal.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like in bed.
Yeah, obviously they yawn when they're tired.
Oh, the lip licking. Like, their appeasement behaviors. Can you talk about that? Like, what people are going to say, well, how do you know they're not just licking their lips? Okay, well, we're going to tell you why.
Okay, so dogs are going to lick their lips. If they're eating something, if you're showing them a treat, they're going to lick their lips. Ooh, exciting. But dogs will also lick their lips if, you take the camera out. A lot of dogs get uncomfortable by, your phone in their face. And dogs will turn around, like turn their head. People say, oh, look, they're camera shy. And they'll be lip licking. They're stressed out.
Wait, I'm so shook right now.
Why? Text it to me.
All of these pictures, they're all doing the things. This one, ears back, tail low, wagging. This one, literally licking his lips.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wouldn't you be embarrassed to post that?
Yeah, so that's what I was saying earlier.
They don't know.
If you're a trainer and you're posting like a bunch of pictures and like a bunch of your dogs are doing things like that.
So people will say, oh, nothing's wrong with my dog. Okay, well, you can see sometimes physical wounds of shock collars and other collars. You can see sometimes, again, only sometimes, you can't see internal damage, and you can't see it if sometimes your dog has long hair, whatever. But even this, the study was even to the trained eye, which many pet owners and trainers do not have, the psychological harm is not so clear. Lowered ear positions, freezing, lip licking, yawning, sniffing the ground, raising a paw, and avoiding eye contact are some of the indicators of the anxiety and unease that the dog is experiencing. And they found that dogs with these tools demonstrate more of these behaviors. So the next issue with these aversive tools is a significant risk of unintended consequences. So Sarah talks a little bit about this with your dog associating the pain or the shock or the jerk with a human instead of with pulling.
Yes.
They did studies where the word heel, when the pressure from a choke chain was applied with the word heel, the dogs would tense up and brace themselves when they heard the word heel for the anticipated pressure rather than
Oh.
for the actual pulling. Right. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
they hear heel and it's like what's coming. They don't, heel is not to them pulling because, again, they're excited when that's happening. Um,
Yeah.
Real danger of unwanted association being made between the unpleasant punishment and some coincidental stimuli.
So heel
Um,
doesn't mean what heel means. So heel is supposed to mean walk right next to me, pay attention to me, right? So the
yeah,
dog took heel to mean heel is
something
I'm
bad is
getting
coming.
something bad is coming. It's a conditioned punisher now. That's
Yeah,
what heel means.
this is basic psychology. I mean, Psych 100, literally.
Yeah.
They did a study with personal injury cases for lawsuits for the ones that were dog attacks. All of the attacks happened near the boundary of the property. And in every single case, this is with dogs with invisible fences, in every single case, the system was operational at the time of the attack. And in most of those cases, the dog did receive the shock.
Mm.
Um, so the findings, led the scientists to believe that there was the interpretation of that unconditioned aggression as a result of the dog having received the electronic shock, and then that avoidance motivated aggression mediated through fear reduction towards human stimuli. So I'm barking, I'm aroused, I see a human passing with their dog, and I get a shock while I'm feeling that, while I'm looking at the human.
Mm-hmm.
That's encouraging that behavior.
And think about that as it would pertain to you. So you're frustrated, right? Because you're wearing a leash and you can't get to the person, right? So you're feeling frustrated. And then now you're adding something that's hurting you. We'll talk about that. Um, to the equation. That is going to fuel, like we said before, frustration fuels aggression. That is going to fuel your fire even more, right?
And again,
At least it would for me.
well, yeah, and it does. This is science based. I mean, it's not something you can. This is a fact. Like frustration fuels aggression. You know, this is invisible fences. So the dog is not being reminded in that moment of, there's not that leash there. You're inside potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and that emotional response is so strong. It's confusing. It
Yes.
really is.
So dogs are smart, and they're smart enough to know when they're wearing the tool and when they're not. And even if you argue that they don't know when they're wearing the tool, right? If you train them properly with it, right, the dog shouldn't know when it's wearing the shock collar because you want to be able to eventually not use one, right? Um, Either way, that's going to cause anxiety. Whether you know when it's on you or not. It's worse if they don't know if it's on them actually, because then it's just perpetual anxiety. Um, if I was wearing a shock collar, I am going to just feel anxious anyway, because this thing that makes me feel pain is on my neck. So, Abby, can you talk about how you felt when you were wearing those vibrating
Oh
bracelets?
yeah, I'm blowing up my spot here. Like to stop like habits like nail biting, picking, like hair pulling, whatever.
So the
Um,
addition of that's an example of positive punishment. The addition of something to stop a behavior.
yeah, I bought
Mm-hmm.
these bracelets. Shout out to Keen Habit Wear. Sponsor us, please. They're really cool. You train the bracelet to whatever behavior you want it to stop doing. And whenever you do that behavior, it vibrates. You can do low, medium, high. You can do short, medium, or long duration.
Mm.
And when
And
I have,
you're in control of all of that.
yeah, it's from an
Mm.
app. And I know when I have them on and when I don't. But I was telling Sarah, like when I got them, I was like literally like, oh my God, is it gonna go off? Like, is it gonna have a false positive? Like, because it does, like, and it says that like you can lower the sensitivity based on if you're typing. Like when I'm typing on the computer, they go off a lot because it's like
Mm.
it thinks I'm doing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I told Sarah, like even when I took them off like at night to charge them, I was still like thinking I'm gonna get shocked Like I was like
Mm-hmm.
expecting it.
Yeah, and those are bracelets that are just vibrating that you chose to put on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so imagine having something that's not just vibrating, you know, it's delivering an electric shock that you don't have any
Static
choice.
electricity.
Yeah, that's producing static electricity that you don't have any choice in and that you can't take off yourself. You know, so that is what these dogs are facing. Um, and that's anxiety inducing. And again, like Abby said before, that study proved that stress inhibits learning. So if your body is under just stress anyway because you use these tools, you are not going to learn as quickly.
Another couple like really interesting studies. A vet did a year-long survey of dog owners who use confrontational or aversive methods to train aggressive pets, and veterinary researchers found that most of these animals will continue to be aggressive
Mm-hmm.
unless the training techniques are modified. So if you're using aggressive methods to train an aggressive dog, they're going to keep being aggressive, because it's kind of like when you spank your child for hitting their brother or sister. Like, okay, what are you telling me to do? Because I'm hitting somebody, now you're hitting me. Like,
Yes.
what do you want me to do? Like, I'm confused.
Yeah, and that goes back also to, you know, being a calm leader, right? I say this a lot because I work with dogs. The more out of control the dog gets, the more in control you have to get. So,
Add
you
the
know,
let's add an applause track
so, you know, people like most often, you know, these tools are used maybe as a last resort, or they're used for um, behaviors that are fueled by emotions. So, like aggressive behaviors, reactive behaviors. So, if your dog is out of control and then you're also getting out of control by getting frustrated and correcting your dog with a leash correction, with a prong collar, with a shock collar, whatever, um, that is not being a leader and showing your dog what you want them to do. You know,
Yeah.
so I said to stay away from trainers that say things like alpha and dominance. Um, it is don't get me wrong here, and I think this is where, you know, positive reinforcement trainers get a bad rep. You still do need to be a leader and a teacher to your dog. You do. Just like you need to be a leader and a teacher to your child.
I like what you say when you say, like, when Russell isn't giving me the behavior I want, he still has to do something that I want. For example, if I'm asking him to do like down or whatever and he's not listening to me, okay, I'm not just gonna say, okay, well, he doesn't want to do it, so whatever. I'm
Yeah.
still gonna have him do something, because yeah, he does need to listen to me because of safety, whatever. But I'm gonna lower my criteria for
Mm,
him, because clearly he's demonstrating to me that that's too difficult for him right now.
yes. Or he's not motivated to
Yes.
listen to me in that moment. So, yes, you still need to be, you know, a teacher. Maybe instead of leader, we can start saying teacher to our dogs, parents to our dogs. They need to listen to you, obviously, you know, like Abby said, for safety. You know, it's not safe to have an untrained dog. It's not. Um, so it is important to train your dog and be a teacher to them, but a benevolent, kind teacher, you know? Not a teacher who's going to punish them when they do something bad. Um, my Russell started getting my
My
Russell.
Russell.
He can be a little bit reactive towards strangers, right? In my apartment complex. So what I don't do is punish him for that, because that's an emotional reaction. He's reacting like that because he's scared, right? Maybe there is some protective component of that, but the root cause of that is fear. So if I were to correct him with an e-collar every time he barked at someone, okay, maybe he'll stop barking. But that root feeling that he has, oh, we didn't even talk about this. Oh my God. That root feeling, that his emotional response to that person is not going away. So the symptom of it, the barking, right, that's going to go away. But he's still going to feel nervous around strangers. And then guess what? He's not going to bark and he's not going to growl. And now we have a dog who shows no warning signs, which
Ooh.
is extremely dangerous. So, this is actually, I think, the most important point. with the use of aversives. It inhibits behavior, and it inhibits
Ooh.
natural behaviors
Ooh.
that, our dogs communicate with. So we like to inhibit barking. We like to inhibit growling. If we create a dog who doesn't bark and who doesn't growl, we just made a dog, again, who is going to show no warning signs.
What do you mean by warning signs?
Warning signs that they're uncomfortable and they might react. So the way a dog responds to something that makes them uncomfortable is that first they'll show stress signals. They'll try to move away. They'll avoid eye contact, right? They can't do all of that on a leash, though, because they're on a leash and they're restrained.
Lip licking.
Lip licking. Next stage of that, right, after the avoidance behaviors and the stress signals, is going to be a growl, right? Now, if we train our dogs and punish our dogs for growling, right, the dog's going to stop growling and go on to the next stage, which is snapping, and then the next stage, which is biting, okay? Because they learned that their stress signals aren't making the bad thing go away. Their avoidance behaviors aren't. Their growl isn't. They just got punished for the growl. So they're just going to escalate straight to biting, which is a real issue. We want to make sure that our dogs are able to communicate, give your fearful dog the option to not say hi to someone. Give your dog the opportunity to show that they're uncomfortable and give them choice. And I think that's where a lot of people, fail, is in that they don't give their dog choice. People expect their dogs to be okay in every situation, right? And if the dog's not a happy-go-lucky, smiley dog in every situation, something's wrong with the dog and it needs to get punished, which is not okay. Give your dog choice. Your dog doesn't like people. Okay, obviously we need to train our dogs so they're not barking and lunging at people, right? But it's okay if your dog doesn't want to be patted on the head by every stranger that walks by.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you have to step up as the dog owner and be, assertive and standing up for your dog.
Yeah. Another study, another vet, most people do not realize that the use of shock interferes with and suppresses normal canine behaviors, not just behaviors that people find problematic. So again, that's what you were talking about. Like,
Yes.
Barking is a natural behavior. That's how they communicate.
Yes.
That is literally their voice. That's like,
yes,
like putting.
That's how they express themselves. There's so many different types of bark. There's excitement barking. There's demand barking. There's alert barking. There's just pure, like, I'm so excited and I just can't hide it barking. There's fear barking. And again, it is important that we train our dogs, right? Because we cannot have a dog that's barking incessantly, right? Because that's a problem behavior, right? We don't want our dog just barking 24 hours a day. So yeah, train your dog if this is an issue, but do not train your dog to never bark again. Bark collars that go off when the dog is barking are completely and utterly ridiculous and need to be banned. Period.
Dash.
Yeah. To punish a dog for barking is like barbaric.
Is punishing a human for communicating.
Yes. And most of the dogs that wear bark collars, they're not wearing bark collars because of actual problem barking. They're wearing bark collars because of they just bark because they're.
We can't hear you because you're walking away from your phone.
Oh. They are wearing bark collars because they're just barking because they're a dog.
Well, or they're nervous. Sometimes your dog is barking because they have anxiety. So that thing that you pop a Xanax for, dogs also feel anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And they're barking because they're nervous. So you're putting a shock collar on them or a static electricity collar on them to make them stop barking. But that's making them more anxious because now they're getting punished for expressing themselves and for letting you know that there's danger. Like, Mom, Dad, somebody is in our house. There's an intruder here. And, oh my God, now I'm getting I don't understand. And if you're not ready for any type of dog that might come out, then you can't get a dog.
That might come out.
Well, If you're not ready for any type of behavior that a dog might have, you can't get a dog.
Yes. Or, you know what? Adopt an adult dog. You know,
But
that's
even an adult dog
well,
might start
yes.
doing
Yes.
a certain behavior that you find distasteful, but you know what? It's a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Russell has to pee.
Um, we can pause it and then. Finally, we just want to talk a little bit about the common excuses or myths surrounding these aversive training methods. So, first of all, a lot of people will say that they choose to get the invisible fence because standard fences are too expensive. So, we did a quick little bit of research, and fence installation costs about $1,500 to $3,000 for an average yard, with most homeowners spending about $1,800.
Okay.
And the national average cost is $1,800. Average range $1,500 to $3,000. Again, minimum cost $200 if you have a really small yard. Maximum cost was ranging up to $6,600. So that's maximum cost. Invisible fence, the minimum again $200, so the same as the fence, and the maximum $2,500. So a typical cost $950 to $1,500. So we're at about the same, maybe a little bit less for the invisible fence. But the one thing that you need to consider is that batteries need to be replaced every 3 months. They recommend. Let me see. Again, I'm on the invisible fence website, people. This is right here. um, and you can only buy them through the store. So they're called PowerCat batteries. Can be purchased through our online store or by calling them. Also, another cost associated with it is you need multiple units if you have multiple dogs. A fence, you have one fence for all your dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Each collar needs to be trained to each dog. So if you have your friend's dog come over, you can't just slap on your extra collar on that dog because they go by
It's
height.
a process. Well,
Yeah.
It's a training process.
Yeah, well, nobody does that anyway. But also, just mechanically, they calibrate the collars to the dog's height in terms of where the stimulus will be looked for, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So if the dog is taller, then the shock's not going to go off because they're looking for the dog, like a dachshund height, for example, if that's what the collar was calibrated for. Another thing is that it uses electricity. Not a huge amount, but it does contribute to your electric bill. With that, if your power goes out, guess what also goes out?
Damn.
Your
I never
invisible
thought
fence.
of that.
And it says it right here on their website. You can choose an optional battery backup. It says if the power outage lasts an hour or more, that you should consider alternate methods of containment. So guess what? Power outage for more than an hour, even with the backup battery, you're SOL. Let's see. Oh, another thing. The correction level on the collar can only be changed by a trainer or a technician in the field or at the counter of your local dealer. So if you think that it's too high or too low, you can't change it yourself. So a lot of people might, just say, oh, okay, whatever, I don't feel like going to the store. Okay, so your dog's getting not the right level of correction, which is going to be unsafe for your dog.
Mm-hmm.
To call them out, pay for the technician visit, whatever. There's a lot of cost associated with it. Or guess what? Your line gets damaged. Guess who has to come out and fix it?
Mm-hmm.
You're moving. Guess what? You got to get a new fence installed at your new location. Another thing, fences add property value to your home. So yeah, you might be spending a little bit more on the outset, but that is an increase to your property value. That nationwide, fences increase property value.
Pertaining to safety, the invisible fence might protect your dog from leaving the yard, but it does not protect against other animals coming in. So, say another dog potentially you have an aggressive dog comes into your dog has no way to leave. um, Predator, if you have a little small guy, skunks, anything like that, your dog can't escape, and, a bunch of things can come in the yard.
Raccoons,
Yeah, and yeah,
porcupines, coyotes.
if you have a sturdy fence, like that's also going to keep your dog safe from the outside world.
Mm-hmm. So again, because the invisible fence is designed to be a training tool, you have to go through a lot of training with them. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but I haven't seen anybody doing these training things. So it says
I have.
after.
So when you get it installed, a trainer does come, the invisible fence person
Mhm.
comes and does a few sessions with your dog, actually. These trainers, I'm not sure if they're just certified through the invisible fence or if they're actual, trainers. That'll be
Mhm.
something to look into.
Well, the reason I said that I don't think a lot of people do the training right is because we've seen a lot of dogs who are scared to cross the boundary. And if you do it
Yes.
correctly, quote correctly, then that shouldn't be happening.
Yes.
So why is your dog that petrified to cross this line if it doesn't hurt and if it doesn't have any negative effects, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so that's a major issue. Dogs, I've seen it firsthand multiple times. Dogs are so scared they put the brakes on to leave, and that poses an issue. If what if you can't take your car out and you can't drive your dog to the bottom of the driveway?
What do you mean by that?
So a lot of dogs that are that scared, in order for people to be able to just walk them around the block, they have to put them in the car and drive them down the driveway. People obviously in those cases can forget to take the collar off, and then now your dog is getting shocked while it's in the car. Negative association with the car now. Um, yeah, it's and they're not, like I said, they can't protect against the outside world from entering your yard, and they're not foolproof. They're man-made tool, right? They're electrical, so like Abby said, um, power could go out, it could not work. And yeah, the dog isn't, if they're trained properly, obviously the dog isn't getting shocked multiple times a day. Hopefully they're only getting shocked once, and then they learn. But still, it's not going to make the sound, right? If the power's out to warn them, and the dog might pick up on that because dogs are smart. And for dogs with a high prey drive, sometimes chasing that squirrel is going to be more reinforcing than, the potential risk of the punishment of the shock. So I don't trust them.
And we had one friend who's they were getting work done on their house and the power line got hit and they didn't realize it and the dog was like getting intermittent shocks just randomly
Stop.
and they didn't notice until like a couple days or a couple weeks later. And so the dog was just getting shocked randomly and like they had to it took them a while to notice and they had to have somebody come out, repair the line,
Yeah.
whatever. So on the training, it doesn't look like they have any outside independent training. It looks like they have, it says they created their own training, Perfect Start Plus training program. And their trainers are certified in that. So it's their own, quote,
Oh.
training program that they created for Invisible Fence. Yeah, just with the boundary thing, like, clearly it's like an issue because I just feel like no. When I was babysitting once, and the dog, I wanted to take the dog on a walk, and he wouldn't go across the line. And I like called the parents. I'm like, what? How am I supposed to get him to come on a walk with us? Like, oh, you have to pick him up and carry him across the driveway. And I was like, I cannot pick your 100-pound dog up and
Yeah.
carry him. And it was so sad. Like he was like whimpering and like cowering, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And I had to like
Yeah.
show him. I'm like, it's okay. Like, and that's just like you can say it doesn't hurt all you want, but like it might not quote. I don't even. it might not hurt in what you think of as hurt, but the fact that they're having that such a negative association, it's
Yes,
evident. It's
exactly.
evident.
Exactly. Like, it's definitely not pleasant if the dog is terrified. And you might argue, okay, well, like, it's to keep them safe. Like, it's good if they're terrified. No, I don't personally. I don't want my dog to ever have that type of fear response to anything, let alone crossing an invisible boundary. You know, like, that is just not okay.
Even their website says the correction from a computer caller may be uncomfortable and startling to your pet.
Yeah.
Like, this is from their I mean, even if you ever, like, I just implore anyone who, utilizes this equipment to just take a minute to have, like, a thoughtful moment of reflection on, like, the actual tool.
Yeah.
They literally call them correction posts.
Yeah.
It delivers a static electric
Mm-hmm.
shock to a dog's neck, which is a sensitive area, and the design is that only one finger should be able to squeeze between the correction post and their skin. So if you think that feels comfortable, whether or not they're in excruciating pain all day, obviously, nobody is saying that. But if you think that that's comfortable, then I would just implore you to maybe have a thoughtful reflection period
Yeah.
through some
And
meditation.
there's so many alternatives, whether it being fencing in your whole yard, fencing in a portion of your yard. That's what we did with my old dog. We have a big yard and we couldn't afford to fence in the whole thing, so we fenced in off of our deck, you know? You could use long lines, obviously always under supervision, with your dog wearing a harness.
Yeah, and people think that these collars, like, oh, well, I want them to be able to go out and run, and just be able to, like, do whatever they want. Okay, but that's also not safe because you should really be supervising them anyway.
Yes.
Because, again, these are not foolproof.
Exactly. And, even I found people who use e-collars really don't walk their dogs that much. I don't know, maybe we'll make a little poll, Abby.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Because most people with e-collars, they have really big yards, right? So they say, oh, I want my dog, like Abby said, to be able to run around, do whatever they want, enjoy the yard. So a lot of times these dogs don't get walked. Also because, they're scared to cross the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
You have a big, beautiful yard, supervise your dog, train them. Whoa. Because your dog shouldn't be outside in your ginormous yard unsupervised anyway. So if your dog has a really awesome recall, then have your dog off leash in your unfenced in yard. That's going to take a lot of training. You know, utilize a 50-foot leash. Have your dog drag a 50-foot leash while they're outside with you. Train your dog. Walk your dog. Train your dog. If you can't afford a fence, yeah, it's like not everybody can, and that's okay. So find other places.
Well, if you can't afford a fence, then you can't afford an invisible fence. So this shouldn't be
exactly.
an issue.
And it's okay. Like, just walk your dog. I don't have a yard of any means right now, but my dog runs around off leash every single
that's
day
true.
because I bring him places.
And for those who say, like, oh, a fence would aesthetically not pleasing,
Yeah.
You know what? That's something that you really need to consider before you bring an
That was my parents'
animal
argument.
to your home.
That I think that's a common argument because people like
Very
the look
common.
of, like, the rolling hillsides in my backyard. But fences can be, like, really, really nice, and like Abby said, they really increase the property value of your house. So no, you don't have to get an ugly chain link fence. Obviously, a big, beautiful vinyl fence is going to be a lot of money, but I think that that's really an investment that's going to enhance how your house looks. It's going to enhance the safety for your pet and other pets.
Your kids.
Your kids.
And if you're really that worried about how your yard looks, then seriously,
seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Consider that. Like, we would just implore you to consider that before you bring an animal into your home who needs.
Another excuse is, oh, they don't hurt. So again, we talked about this like a lot, but it feel, people compare it to like when you walk across the carpet and then you touch the TV. Like, again, you might say, okay, that doesn't hurt. Okay, but think about that on your neck. You're not expecting it. It's coming at a time when you're already on edge.
Because also, yeah, you're gonna think about it. Like, when the dog does get shocked by it, it is when they don't expect it. It's one thing if you're getting shocked, I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna shock you with this now. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. But then when the dogs do get shocked by it, it's because they're chasing something. Maybe they're following their mom to the mailbox. Like, they're distracted, and then all of a sudden, like, bam, that sucks.
And especially with the ones that you can control, or the ones that are for barking. Like, a lot of times, those have a lot of false positives.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah can attest to that. They go off when other dogs. They say that you can use them in multi-dog homes, right?
Yeah. You can't use them. No, because I'm sorry, I just don't trust that. Even vibrating collars, even the citronella collars in multi-dog houses, or just in general, it's not fair. They sell this thing, actually, a nice alternative to a bark collar. We'll do a little plug here. The Pet Tutor.
Only if they're going to sponsor us.
All right, sponsor us, Hannah. Okay, so
Hannah, is that her name?
Yeah, Hannah. People use bark collars a lot if their dogs bark when they're not home, right? So what do you really do when you're not home? You need something that's going to train your dog when you're not there. So the Pet Tutor, instead of by using punishment, uses reinforcement to train your dog when you're not home. So, it's a little device, and you can set it to reward your dog on a set interval that you can change over time, to increase. And it can reward your dog after a certain amount of time of silence. So if you're trying to train your dog to stop barking when you're not home, first you set it for just every 5 seconds, right? If your dog barks, okay, it's going to wait 5 seconds, and then it's going to reward. And then your dog is going to catch on, and then you just gradually increase the time.
Sponsor us, please. I'm just kidding. Not really. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the most common. I mean, really, people who use aversive training methods want quick results that they don't want to work with their dog. And you know what? If you're going to get a dog, you have to be ready to work. It's like if you're going to have a kid, you have to be ready to work. You're going to get a dog, you got to be ready to work. So
yeah, and it's important to note that these aversive tools do work for the behavior you're trying to change. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah,
so,
like, Sarah always says that. Like, she's like, yeah, they'll make your dog stop barking.
Yeah.
It will.
I can be an aversive trainer and go to someone's house and put a bark collar on their dog, right? Yes, your dog is going to stop barking a lot quicker than using positive reinforcement. 100%. I'll get it'll within a day, within a few barks, really, really quick results. You can get your leash reactive dog to stop reacting by using a shock collar or a prong really, really quickly. But the fallout, like all of the negatives that we just listed, it is just not worth it, and it's not ethical to do that to our pets, our family members,
And it's not safe for them or for you, because the potential for that aggression and that redirection to come back on you, it's not worth the risk. And your kid is handling the dog, it's not safe. And there's a reason that these tools have been banned in other countries. The United Kingdom has banned them. Canada is pushing legislation to ban them. They will be banned here within a decade or two, I hope. So, should we tell them our surprise now?
Our surprise.
This week, we're doing a special 2-part because we didn't want to leave you on a bad note. Obviously, if you have these tools in your house or you work with a trainer that used these tools before, and it might be working for you right now, we would love to give you some alternatives to try and let us know how it worked for you. So we threw out some terms like positive reinforcement. So we would love to kind of give you guys a tour into that. So tomorrow we're going to be dropping our special Tuesday episode on positive reinforcement, and we're going to have a talk with our special guest Sarah from Sarah&Abby's Vegan Adventures, discussing positive reinforcement and how you can, it's not too late for you to try something new. And
No.
if you don't like it, then okay. But if you do,
and then like Abby mentioned in the beginning, this episode wasn't to bash people, hurt people's feelings, make them feel like they're wrong for doing something. We're just trying to educate and advocate, So, yeah.
Educate and advocate. Educate and advocate.
I'm gonna get a shirt.
Yeah, it's really about misinformation, and so you're not a bad person for using these tools. Your mom and your dad aren't a bad person. Your grandma's not a bad person. It's about misinformation.
The bad people are the educated, the people
trainers,
who are trainers and recommending them. And like I mentioned before, my family was fooled by
mine too. We had we went to a chain.
Yes. So yeah, you're not
alone
if you use them. So don't beat yourself up. It's not too late to change. And we'll be discussing that, in our next episode.
Yeah, so we would really love to hear from you guys. Definitely don't want to put anybody off. We really just want to help. We just want to help people.
Yeah.
No, we really feel like this would enrich your life. So just try it.
It opens up a whole new, using positive reinforcement also, is really going to enhance your relationship with your dog.
Okay, yeah. I was literally just about to say that because, I never used, obviously any of these tools. Well, except for our first dog, we had a choke chain for, a minute. But when Sarah became trainer certified or whatever, she started telling me all these, techniques or whatever. I started using them on our dog. And, I just feel like it's so much more fun. Because I feel like, sometimes when you, have to take the dog for a walk, you're kind of all right, whatever. But now it's kind of oh, I'm going to practice, everything that I've been learning. And so I feel like it's kind of cool for you because you're oh my God, I'm literally learning something too. And yesterday I taught her a new trick and that was so cool for me.
Yeah.
Because I felt accomplished. So even if, and before we would, even kind of we would yell at her for let's say chasing the cat or whatever. And then, when Sarah taught me well, she's not chasing the cat to because she's trying to be mean to the cat. She's chasing the cat because she has a natural drive to chase prey. And so now it's okay, how can I work with that? It's kind of like a puzzle. So I think it's really
exactly. And exactly. Having my own puppy, he's proven to be a very high energy man. So it's
he's not a puppy anymore.
It's his birthday.
Today's his birthday.
Big boy.
Well, yesterday because we're posting tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, May 3rd is his birthday. Sometimes things work really easily. Sometimes your dog surprises you and picks up on it in 1 second.
Yeah.
And you're wait,
Daisy.
What?
We learned yesterday she learned a whole new trick. And Sarah told me that means she's really smart. And so it's really cool.
And, instead of having kind of a power dynamic with your dog, which I think those trainers like you to have, think that you
need.
Yes, rule by intimidation. Your dog is your submissive, blah, blah, blah. Well, submissive to you.
What? Was that a BDSM reference?
Yeah, I messed it up.
Hashtag BDSM.
Instead of having that intimidation factor with your relationship with your dog, it's more of a team. It's more you're working on solving something as a team, which I think is a really good way of living, because like you're sharing your life with another animal, which is so cool. You know, like your best pal is another
Man's
species.
best friend.
Yeah, is another species, and that's so cool. So why make that like a power dynamic? Make it like a friendship. You know?
Yeah, because everyone and their mom who uses these tools, what's the first thing that comes out of their mouth? I love my dog.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not hurting my dog. I love my dog. I want to take care of my dog. I love my dog. Okay, if you, like, try, you know, we would just, again, implore you to consider trying something new.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's okay to, again, when you learn new information, like me, I was like, I'm going to yell. Obviously, I'm going to yell at her when she chases the cat. That's bad. Okay, I learned something new. And guess what? Now, we're not yelling at her when she chases the cat. We're rewarding her when the cat comes in and she doesn't react to her.
Yes.
And that's working a lot better for us.
Yes.
It's okay to change your mind about things. It's okay.
Yes,
people.
and it's okay to admit you're wrong. Like,
it's okay to admit that you didn't know, too. It's okay to,
exactly. Like, yeah, I obviously feel terrible that I used to use those methods on my old dog. So, okay, now I'm not using those methods anymore. I was wrong and I was not educated.
And instead of being like, okay, well, no, because if I say that, then that means I was abusing my dog. So I'm going to keep doing it. No, she got new information, so she changed her beliefs.
And you know what? If any of you have any scientific articles,
oh yeah, we would love to read them
on punishment, you know, and how that works better, like the benefits of a prong collar, a choke collar, an e-collar on learning. Please forward them to us, because I personally have not ever seen one in my life, ever. I've only seen positive reinforcement, but no, but seriously, like if there was an art, if someone does research and finds something different than what we're talking about, I would love to read it.
It would have to be like from May 1st, 2020, because there's literally no...
Yeah, if it's like brand new.
There's literally no peer-reviewed article that supports
not.
the argument that positive punishment... I mean, you can look in any psychology book. It's like literally like positive reinforcement is the most effective way to learn. Done. Yeah. Like, that's it.
Yeah, it is.
But our email is sarah&abby.veganadventures@gmail.com. So yeah, we will read it and we will respond to you, because we love to be informed.
Yes, we do. We do. I do.
What? You say I don't? I do.
No, like we do. We all do.
All right, we're going to let you guys go, but tune in tomorrow and learn about positive reinforcement and how you can use it to enhance your life and enhance your dog's life. And you don't have to revitalize your life to try positive reinforcement. You don't have to have an awakening and convert. It's not that serious. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
I promise.
Yes.
Promise. Okay.
See you next time.
Goodbye.